So the fourth coverage, the physical damage coverage, Part D of the personal auto policy, provides coverage for the property damage to the insured's auto. So the liability, again, was third-party coverage that was providing coverage to someone that you hit, both injuries as well as the property damage. The uninsured and underinsured motorists did provide some, could potentially, I should say, depending on the state, provide some coverage for your loss to your car. But the physical damage coverage is sort of the primary part, the Part D of the coverage, where your property is covered in the event that you are the at-fault party. So if the insured is at fault, hits a pole, hits another car, the physical damage coverage, Part D, is where you'll find coverage. As with the liability coverage, this coverage extends to other vehicles. So a very common situation is a rental car. You rent a car, your coverage typically will extend to that rental car. One thing that we haven't really talked about up to now is this notion of a deductible. I believe you talked about that in Dr. Drennan's assignment. The physical damage portion of the auto policy does have a deductible. So that is a sharing mechanism between the insurance company and the insured. So if you have a loss, you're going to be responsible for $500, $1,000, whatever your deductible is in that situation. The physical damage coverage, there are two options. One is referred to as collision. This is fairly aptly named in that it provides coverage for damage to your vehicle if it sort of generically hits something, collides with something. The one exception to this is collision with an animal. So the collisions with animals are going to be covered in the next part. But if you hit a telephone pole, if you hit another car, if your car is upset, that doesn't mean it's crying. Rather, it means it overturns in insurance terminology. All of these are covered under the collision part of the physical damage coverage. Again, here there's often a deductible associated with that coverage. And again, I'm doing very poorly at moving through these slides. I'll try to be better. So this is the collision coverage. The other option, also rather aptly named, is other than collision. And you can imagine that's virtually everything else. Here we do find collisions with animals. So that's sort of the one exception. But anything else, a fire, a theft, vandalism, these sorts of things are covered under the other than collision component. This actually, the other than collision coverage will tend to have a lower deductible than the collision coverage, and in fact, in some policies, there's no deductible for the other than collision. Notice we haven't got a lot of questions, so I'll pose one to you now, and you can answer or not, but I'm going to move along anyway. But can you think of why the other than collision component might have a lower deductible from the collision component? If I get some answers as we move along, we'll come back and address that. The last thing that we'll mention with respect to the auto policy is this sort of notion of an at-fault versus a no-fault state. Historically, most states were sort of this tort state or an at-fault state, so that if you caused an accident, you were responsible for the cost, whether it be injury cost, property damage loss to the individual or individuals that you caused an accident. Some states have adopted what they refer to as no-fault statutes or no-fault rules, in which case they sort of say, all right, well, if there's an accident, everybody just go their separate ways. Right, we're not going to assign fault. We're not going to burden the judicial system with all these cases when it comes to drivers suing other drivers. And so you go your own separate way, have your insurance company pay for your loss, the other party's insurance company will pay for their loss. And in theory, again, this is designed to sort of minimize legal expenses. And to that end, these states that have this sort of no-fault agreements, the way it's handled in the insurance policy is this PIP, personal injury protection. So it's oftentimes an endorsement that's added to the insurance policy that says, okay, again, if there's an injury or an accident, my insurance company will pay for me, your insurance company will pay for you, and we never really worry about who is at fault or not. Just to be clear, really no state has a true no-fault law. So at some point, you're able to sue if the accident is bad enough. Some states have what they might call a verbal threshold, where if there's a drunk driver involved, you can sue. Other states are a little bit more obvious in that they have a quantitative threshold, or they might call that a dollar threshold, where if the accident was above a certain dollar amount, the parties can sue, the at-fault party can be sued by those that they injured. All right, but otherwise, if they don't meet that threshold, then both parties sort of go their way, and this personal injury protection, this PIP coverage is what is used. All right, well, that ends our discussion of the homeowners and personal auto policy. We'll shift gears a little bit now away from specific coverages and talk a bit about a couple of insurance markets, so to speak. We mentioned earlier, particularly with the homeowners policy, that there are a couple of perils, earthquake and flood we mentioned, that were hard to insure. Well, in addition to earthquake and flood, there are other risks that are hard to insure. They're relatively unique, that have potentially high losses, that have potentially high probability of loss, where insurance is desired, but it could potentially be difficult for an insurer to find the coverage in sort of what we might refer to as a standard market. So when we go and buy insurance from State Farm or Nationwide, this is what we might think of as sort of a standard market, and we just sort of walk up to the door and we buy insurance. Oftentimes, again, with these sort of unique perils or hard to insure perils, the standard market doesn't insure them. And one market that does insure them, that's what they refer to as the surplus lines market. You often see this referred to as the excess and surplus lines market. So if I say ENS or surplus lines, it's all the same. The idea here, again, is that this market is designed to help place coverage for some of these examples that we've mentioned that are hard to insure, that are we might call non-standard, that are unique, that require some sort of new form, new underwriting, these sorts of things. And there they go to the ENS market. This happens, again, oftentimes insurers are unwilling to cover a lot of these losses. You might have heard about the Warren Buffett's bracket challenge back in the spring, where Quicken offered $1 billion to anyone that could correctly guess all the March Madness teams correctly. And of course, they wanted to insure that risk. They didn't want to pay $1 billion, as is understandable. And so they tried to get insurance. And in fact, Warren Buffett very famously offered them insurance for what a lot of people, I think, felt was a relatively expensive cost. But at any rate, he offered them coverage. And this is something where a very, very good example where the ENS market would have provided coverage for something that was unique, something that hadn't been really offered before, and something that, frankly, probably most insurers were unwilling to offer coverage for. Along those same lines, insurers that are in sort of high loss situations, so those that are prone to flooding, prone to high wind losses, might well find it very difficult to find coverage in these standard markets, and individuals at that point can go to these ENS markets. There are other options that we'll talk about in the legislation and regulation assignment of this webinar, but the ENS market is one place where these sort of high-risk exposures and insurers might well find find coverage. In general, again, the ENS market provides the insureds, those that need it, an opportunity to find these coverages that might require higher limits. That's the $1 billion broader coverage. This